Well, hello and welcome to another Study Coding with Me live. I will just be waiting for some people to join. I'm waiting for my eye icon to show some people watching, and then we will wait for like 2 or 3 minutes to give a chance for anybody that's not already here to join. Then we will get started from where we left off last time. Hello, say hello in the chat. If you're new here, I'd like to know about you. We are waiting for some more people to join, then we will get started for a few minutes. Hello and welcome. Say hello in the chat. And also guys, while we're waiting to see if any more people join, if you didn't already give a like to the live, I would appreciate one so that YouTube can show this live to more people, so more people can join and ask questions if they have any. Okay, well, I guess I don't know if anybody is joining now, so I'm going to get started. We're going to get started from where we left off last time, and I will keep an eye on the chat to see if there's any questions. So if you have any questions about the content that we're going through, do let me know and I'll try to answer them. Alright, let me change screens. And we left off last time here. I'm going to make this on this side. And we're learning about declare a read-only variable with the const keyword. So the keyword let is not the only way to declare variables. In ES6, you can also declare variables using the const keyword. Const has all the awesome features that let has, with the added bonus that variables declared using const are read-only. They are a constant value, which means that once a variable is assigned with const, it cannot be reassigned. So for me to explain here in Visual Studio Code, let me open a terminal. And let's say we create a variable with the let keyword like this, let name equals Marian, right? Now, if I declare a variable with let, I can actually take this variable later and change its value like that, right? If I run this program, one second, if I run now Freecodecamp, I get no error. This happens with no problem. But if I declare it with the const keyword, let's do that and try to run it again, we get some error which says assignment to constant variable. So JavaScript does not allow us to change the value of a variable if we declare it with const. Now, before ES6 in JavaScript, the way developers used to declare constants was by using uppercase letters to declare the variable. So that way, when somebody saw a variable like that with uppercase letters, they knew that that variable shouldn't be changed because it should stay as it was declared the first time. But JavaScript will still allow this to be changed. It was just for people to know that it shouldn't be changed, right? But now JavaScript has introduced the const keyword, which basically helps you declare a variable that cannot be changed, right? So here it says const has all the awesome features that let has, with the added bonus that variables declared using const are read-only. They are a constant value, which means that once a variable is assigned with const, it cannot be reassigned. I think we already read this. So as you can see, they even do it with uppercase letter here, even though they don't need to, but this is how they were doing it before when they were declaring a variable that should be a constant, right? So this returns an error because it has been declared with the const keyword, right? As you can see, trying to reassign a variable declared with const will throw an error. You should always name variables you don't want to reassign using the const keyword. This helps when you accidentally attempt to reassign a variable that is meant to say constant. A common practice when naming constant in use is to use all uppercase letter with words separated by an underscore. So here they say it is common for developers to use uppercase variable in the identifiers for immutable values and lowercase or camel case for mutable values. So even now you can start like just using uppercase variable names for constants if you want to have something that that's what you use, right? But it doesn't need to be like that. Change the code so that all the variables are declared using let or const. Use let when you want the variable to change and const when you want the variable to remain constant. Also rename variables declared with const to conform to common practices, meaning constants should be in all caps. So here, if you look at the code that they give us, we can see that this remains a constant because it's never changed. So we can say that we don't want this to change at any time. So I will declare it with const and I will change it to uppercase letters, right? And then in here this I will change, so we need to change it to let, right? And here we use sentence because we changed it there, right? Sentence. Okay, let's run this and let's go further. Let me clear this because I don't like how it looks. Alright, so there's only one person watching at the moment, but we will continue at least for an hour. Do let me know who you are in the chat so at least I know who's watching. Alright, so let's go further here. And here it says mutate an array declared with const. The const declaration has many use cases in modern JavaScript. Some developers prefer to assign all their variable using const by default unless they know they will need to reassign the value. Only in that case they use let. However, is it important to understand that objects including arrays and functions assigned to a variable using const are still mutable. Using the const declaration only prevents reassignment of the variable identifier. So if you declare an array like this with const s and you give it an array, if you try to give to s another array, that throws an error because s is a constant. But you can actually change something that is inside the array. So you can change s of 2 to 45, and then when you console log s you will get 5645 because you have changed something inside it. So you can change its contents, or the contents of an array you can still change even if it's declared with const, and also the contents of an object, but you cannot change by reassigning a whole other object, right? Because it's a constant. Basically arrays and objects are somehow addresses in memory. So you cannot change the address, but you can change the contents inside that address, right? So as you can see, you can mutate the object 567 itself, and the variable s will still point to the altered array 5645. Like all arrays, the array elements in s are mutable, but because const was used, you cannot use the variable identifier s to point to a different array using the assignment operator, right? So what we have learned is for array and objects, if you declare with const sum array, right? And you have something like this. What this says, some array, it is basically because it points to an array, it basically points to an address in memory, which is a constant and cannot be changed. So if you're actually trying to change some array, which is a variable that is constant, right, and you want to give it another array, which is basically another address, that will not work because it is a constant. But what you can do is actually change the values inside the address here. So what you could do is you could say stuff like they said here, some array of, or you could say, for example, some array push 4, and that would add a 4 at the end and stuff like that. So you can still change these contents, but you cannot change the address, right? Alright, so here it says an array is declared as const s572. Change the array to 257 using various element assignments, right? So what we could do is, because s is 572 and we need to change it to 257, we could do something like this. We could say const a equals, so basically because we're trying to get first 2, so we're saying const a equals to s of 2, because that's the index of 2, right? Then we're saying or maybe we can say const 1, right? Then we can say const 2 equals, so the second one that we want is 5 and it's at position 0, so we say s of 0, right? And then const 3 equals to, we want 7, so it's s of 1, right? S of 1. So now we have all those numbers in variables, and what we can say is well, we could say something like, yeah, I think I did a little bit mistake here, but we can go like this as well. We can say s of 0, right, and we give it 1 equals 1, s of 1, and we give it 2, right, and s of 2, and we give it 3, because we store the values that we wanted in this order 1, 2, 3, and then we give them this value at these indexes, right? So we basically change the values at the indexes, right? So now let's run it, and that's it. Do let me know in the chat if you understood what I did there. If not, I will come back to it. Alright, so let's go further. Okay, so here it says prevent object mutation. As seen in the previous challenge, const declaration alone doesn't really protect your data from mutation. To ensure your data doesn't change, JavaScript provides a function called object freeze to prevent data mutation. Once the object is frozen, you can no longer add, update, or delete properties from it. Any attempt at changing the object will be rejected without an error. So it will be rejected, but there will be no error thrown. So if you have an object like this and you freeze it, if you try to add any new property, and I think also if you try to change any property, oh yeah, if you try to change any property or add any property, will be ignored because mutation is not allowed. So if we have this object, right, and here I can say console log object, so I can see the object. First, what I want to do is use this method object, which object is basically kind of a JavaScript object with property, a prototype, right? The prototype object, right? And you use a method from it called freeze, and you pass it this object, and this freezes the object, which means you will not be able to change the value of any property inside it. So now if we do object review and we try to change to be bad instead, you will see that now when I console log the object, it still be the way it was before. It's still Freecodecamp and review awesome because it cannot be changed because we freezed it. If we didn't freeze it and we try again, we are able to change it. So by freezing it with object freeze, that means that we cannot change it anymore, right? So you might need this sometimes, so it's good to remember, right? In this challenge, you are going to use object freeze to prevent mathematical constants from changing. You need to freeze the math constant object so that no one is able to alter the value of pi, add or delete properties, right? So we have a math constants, and what we need to do is object freeze, and we pass it to the math constants, right? Okay. All right. All right. Wow, very quiet today this live. Anyway, let's go further. So here saying use arrow functions to write concise anonymous function, and arrow functions are so nice compared to regular functions. In JavaScript we often don't need to name our function, especially when passing a function as an argument to another function. Instead we create inline functions. We don't need to name these functions because we do not reuse them anywhere else. To achieve this, we often use the following syntax, and it's something like that. Const, and you create a variable called my function, and you give it a function, right? Now here it says exes provide us with a syntactic sugar to not have to write anonymous functions this way. Instead you can use arrow function syntax, right? So you do something like this, and this, and this, right? So basically this removes the function but adds like an equal and like kind of an arrow here, right? So the way you would write a function like this, const freeze maybe equal function, and let's say we pass an object here, and then this function freezes the object, right? Object freeze object. Instead of writing it like this, you can writing it like this using arrow how you call it, arrow function syntax, right? So you say const freeze equals, and instead of saying function you just put this like this, you pass whatever parameters you have, object, then you have like an arrow, and then you have this, and you do that. So that's a bit shorter, right? Object freeze object, right? And the nice thing is in arrow functions also, if you have just one thing happening in the function, or is just returning one thing, then you can basically remove this and just have it like this, right? So if it's only one thing happening in the function, or if it's returning just something, right, then you can remove this and only have, basically this can be called a return, right? And it returns doing this, right? So you can see that if I have an object here const words equal some word, and then you have Marian, whatever, and then you use the freeze. We have created a function with the arrow function syntax, and then you use freeze, and you freeze the words object, and then you try to change words of some word equals Silvio, and then you console log the words, right? It's still Marian because we have run this function and this function did this. So as you can see, this works. Obviously it works because plenty of people are using it, right? When there is no function body and only a return value, arrow function syntax allow you to omit return as well. So what we were saying before, as well as the brackets surrounding the code. This helps simplify smaller function into one-line statements. So if you're just returning a string like value, you can just use this, and this basically is kind of like a return, right? This code will return the string value by default. Rewrite the function assigned to the variable magic, which returns a new date, to use arrow function syntax. Also make sure nothing is defined using the keyword var. So instead of var, let's call it a const, because that's how you usually would declare a function, with const, right? And you have const magic, and instead of using this syntax, we can use this syntax, which we use this, right? We use that return, kind of return, and basically because it's only a return here, we can remove this, we can remove the return keyword, we can remove this, and just have this, right? Just this. All right. Okay, so here it says write arrow functions with parameters. Just like a regular function, you can pass arguments into an arrow function. And here they're explaining how you can pass parameters as well. And we have learned about this here, right? But about using parameters. What is good to know is that if there's only one parameter, you can actually omit the parentheses and just write it like this. For me, Visual Studio Code, when I save, it basically automatically does some formatting and it adds this, but this is not really needed. This would still work, right? Like this. But for me, Visual Studio, it just changes it. So if an arrow function has a single parameter, the parentheses enclosing the parameter may be omitted, like this, right? It is possible to pass more than one argument into an arrow function. So you can pass more arguments, but if you pass more arguments, you don't need these parentheses, right? Rewrite the myConcat function, which appends contents of array 2 to array 1, so that the function uses arrow function syntax. So here we have the old way of writing functions, and we have to rewrite it to use this. So we can remove the function, we can use this arrow, and because it's only one return, we can delete the return and delete this, right? And we have to remove this from here. So we have the parameters here, then we have the return arrow, and then we have this, right? They also wanted us to replace the var thing to const, right? All right. Okay. Okay, set the default parameters for your functions. In order to help us create more flexible functions, ES6 introduces default parameters for functions. So check out this code. Const greeting equals, and you have this parameter, and you say the parameters, I have a parameter of name which is equal to anonymous. And what this means is, if when the function it is called, if there is no parameters passed, then the default value of name will be anonymous. So if there's no name passed, no value passed for name, then name will have the variable of anonymous. So let's copy this to show how this works, right? Alright, so let me copy this, and you can see here like this. If I say console log, and this is what is returned, right? And I use greeting, and I pass the string Marian. So if I actually pass something for name, then I will get hello Marian, because Marian is used here if it is actually passed. If I don't pass nothing, right, and I try this again, I will get hello anonymous, because this is the default value if no value is passed, right? So we get hello anonymous, right? The default parameters kicks in when the argument is not specified, so it is undefined. As you can see in the example above, the parameter name will receive its default value anonymous when you do not provide a value for the parameters. You can add default values for as many parameters as you want. So no matter how many parameters you want, you can add default values for any of them, right? So here is saying modify the function increment by adding default parameters so that it will add 1 to number if value is not specified. So we have here value, and it says it will add, if we only pass number and we don't pass value, then instead of returning number plus value, because value is not passed, it will get as default 1. So we want to say here value equals 1. So it means this is the default value. So if I don't pass a value, then it will return the number plus 1. Let me show this as well. So if I console log increment and I pass 5 and 10, it will return 5 plus 10, right? So 15, right? If I don't pass the value, then it returns 6, because it takes the default value as 1, right? So let's run this. Alright. Use the REST parameters with function parameters. In order to help us create more flexible functions, ES6 introduces the REST parameter for function parameters. With the REST parameter, you can create functions that take a variable number or argument. These arguments are stored in an array that can be accessed later from inside the function. So you write something like this. I don't know why they're using a function here, because we're talking about, so here we're talking about the args for normal function, right? So if you declare a function like you are used to, and here you use the REST operator and you call an args, right? What's happened is you can pass as many parameters as you want to these functions, and all these parameters are going to be stored into an array, right? Then you can use the things in the array to do whatever you want. So for example, what if I want to create a function that's called sum, right? And that function can get as many parameters, and no matter how many you pass to the function, it will add all of them up, right? So you want to create a function sum, right? And you want to be able to pass to this as many parameters as you want, and the function will add all of them up and return the sum, right? So what you would do, you would use the REST operator, and you would say that I'm going to store all of them in an array called args, right? So you use the rest operator, which the rest operator means it takes a lot of variables and it puts them all into an array, right? So now, if I want to say, for example, console log args, and this is the array, if I actually say sum of 1, 2, 3, you will see that when I run this program, it will actually log to the console an array with the numbers 1, 2, 3, right? So you see an array with the numbers 1, 2, 3. So if we want to actually return the sum, or maybe instead of returning so that we can see what's happening, we want to console log the sum of all the numbers, right? What we can say is for well, I can say something like const sum equals 0, and I think we have already learned for each here. So now we can say args for each, and because now we have learned arrow functions as well, instead of using a normal function in here, we can use an arrow function, and you say for each number what you want to say. And basically what's happened here, each element in the array will be put in number and used in this for each, and we want to say sum plus equals number. So we basically add that number to the sum, and then we console log the sum, right? So now what's happening here, assignments to, I made sum a constant, it should not be a constant, we should be able to change it, right? So let's do this again, and we get 6, 1 plus 2 plus 3. Now you can pass here as many as you want, it doesn't matter. See, this is a function that can get as many, you can pass it as many parameters as you want, right? And now if we do this, we get 42, which is the sum of this, right? So this is how you can make a function with an unknown number of parameters, right? By using the rest operator. The rest parameter eliminates the need to check the args array and allow us to apply map, filter, and reduce on the parameters array. Modify the function sum using the rest parameter in such a way that the function sum is able to take any number of arguments and return their sum. Is where it asks us to do basically exactly what we did here. So here is saying, so instead of saying this, we can say, we can remove this, and actually this is a let's see what they're saying here. Okay, so we need to change, I think, this to a function, because I don't know if the args, the rest operator works in, does it work here as well? Let me check. I'm not sure if it works with arrow function as well. It should work, right? Args, this should work as well, right? And we can remove this because it's an arrow function, and this should work, right? Yeah. So going back to it, what we're doing is we're using the rest operator to basically make the sum, make the function able to take any number of parameters which will be put in an array called args, right? And then we're using the reduce method, which they should explain at some point, I guess. We're using the reduce methods to sum up all the numbers in the array, right? If you don't know how the reduce method works, I do have a series on my YouTube channel that explain it in detail from basic to advanced, so I think that would be really useful to watch. All right, let's run this again and let's go further. Let me check if anybody said anything. nobody said anything because there's only one person watching, or maybe no person watching and it's just showing an eye because nobody said nothing. Alright. Okay, so here it says use the spread operator to evaluate arrays in place. So here it says ES6 introduces the spread operator, which allows us to expand arrays and other expressions in places where multiple parameters or elements are expected. The ES5 code below uses apply to commute the maximum value in an array. So you have an array like this, and here it says mat max apply null an array. So this is a way to basically be able to pass an array to mat max, which mat max usually you call it with usually when you call mat max you give it a number of values, right, and it finds the maximum value from there. If you have an array like this, you cannot pass an array like that to max. You cannot say const numbers equals 1 2 3 4. You cannot actually do this. You cannot say mat max of numbers, because mat max takes numbers like this, not in an array. So what they were doing in ES5 is they were using basically an apply method, and they were passing null, and I'm not sure exactly how this works, and then they were passing the array or numbers, right? Now with the spread operator, which looks exactly like the rest operator, when you use the spread operator on an array, if I say something like this, numbers, what's actually happening is actually taking all the contents of the array and it's just spreading them, basically removing the address or the array from it. So if I basically say mat max, and inside here I use the spread operator and I say numbers, then it will spread basically these numbers in here, and it will be basically the same thing as I do here, right? Because you just spread this element, right? And I will show you one more thing, right? Let's say we have a const numbers, oh sorry about that, numbers equals 1 2 3 4, right? Equals. Alright, what's my problem here? Const numbers equals 1 2 3 4, right? Numbers, and then I'm saying const other numbers, and what I'm doing is I'm saying I'm giving to this, I'm giving the value of numbers, right? So what's going on here? If I console log now other numbers, clear, and this, I'm getting in other numbers now I have the same values as numbers, but basically what's going on, it didn't actually make a regular copy of numbers. What it actually made here, it basically made other numbers point to the same location in the computer's memory as numbers does, right? So now if I go ahead and say I change something in other numbers, I'm saying other numbers of 0, so basically this element, I'm changing this to Marian, right? You can see if I console log other numbers, it has changed that value in other numbers, but if I console log numbers, you can see that actually the first value changed in numbers as well, because it is the same address in memory. So if instead of pointing to the same address in memory, you just want the contents of the array, What you want to do is basically create another array, so another address in memory, and spread the elements of that address from numbers inside that new address, right? So now if I console log numbers, numbers will remain unchanged, right? While other numbers has been changed, right? Because it is another address now. It just has the same content. So basically we're spreading the contents of the address and numbers in here, right? Wow, that was a lot. Okay, so here is saying we had to use mathmax apply null or an array because mathmax of r returns not a number. Mathmax expects comma separated arguments but not an array. The spread operator makes this syntax much better to read and maintain. So if you have something like this, you basically spread the array inside, right? Array returns an unpacked array. So spread array returns an unpacked array. In other words, it spreads the array. However, the spread operator only works in place, like in an argument to a function or in an array literal. The following code will not work. Const spreaded equals this will throw a syntax error, obviously, because you cannot just spread things that are not basically inside something, right? Copy all contents of array 1 into another array, array 2, using the spread operator, and we already this here, right? So we can say array 2 equals spread array 1, right? Alright, so I think I will stop here for today because there's really not many people watching, and I do have some other stuff that I have to do today, and because we also went through quite a few things like spread, rest, arrow function, so this was quite a lot, so I don't want to go too fast in these lives. So yeah, if you watched this one and you enjoyed it, if you didn't give a like already, please give a like so that more people can see these lives happening, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye bye for now.